Hi, I'm Professor Jon Adams from University of Technology, Sydney, Professor of Public Health, and I direct the Australian Research Centre in Complementary and Integrative Medicine. So I'm originally from Doncaster, South Yorkshire. That's my background. Obviously I did a lot of study and a lot of work in the UK first, but I came out to Australia in 2001. I took a job at the University of Newcastle in the Faculty of Health. That was a continuing appointment, and I've been here ever since for the last 14 years or so. My early degrees were all in social science, sociology, so I got very interested in people. I got interested in human relationships, the way society was organized, and it took my imagination even as a teenager. So that's what I really, when I started to get very interested in, I didn't realize at the time that that could have an academic outlet. And then, like most people, I carried through university qualifications, and then at the end of a PhD, I decided, well, I really do enjoy doing this all the time. Academia is not what most people from outside often think it is. It isn't just sat in an office working away, writing and reading. It's like all aspects of life. It's very political. It's very cultural. You have to be able to engage and communicate people well. And that's really what drew me in. I'm fascinated by the science and the research of what I do, but I really just enjoy it. I love it. So, and if you're not passionate about something, then of course you tend not to stick at it. Truthfully say no. Like all careers and like all aspects of work in life, there are times when you're feeling a little down and other times when you're feeling up. Sometimes it's due to things, some things are beyond your control. But other times you just need to take a bit of a break from a particular task you're doing and come back. But I feel very fortunate. This is quite personal, but I feel very fortunate. I do wake up every day and go to work with a smile on my face, can't wait to get in. So that's nice. Well, there's two aspects. One is that if you just think about the process itself, it's very incremental. So you've already answered a research question through some study or a research project. That will often spark new ideas just through the process of analysing that data, collecting data, talking to people, reading the literature. And that's really how the next project comes along. It's sometimes it can be very left field and blue sky. Other times it could just be applying a particular approach that you've already undertaken, but moving it sideways slightly and asking it of a different population or a different research clinical question. The other aspect, though, to research, of course, is the reality of it. It'd be lovely to sit around and just think of research questions, get money and do them, but the real world doesn't work like that. We live in constraints of funding. Most researchers, particularly with large programs like ours, need proper funding. We're talking thousands, if not millions of dollars over time. And that doesn't really constrain you, but it does mean that you've now got a different audience. You have to write to a funding body, and what you want to do has to fit with some common interest and aim that they have as well. And there's an art to that, grantsmanship, of how you write that. So starting off very green, everyone usually as a researcher think, this is brilliant, I can just answer whatever questions I like. Well, some questions are more pertinent to lots of other people and for very good reason than others. Some research questions can be extremely academic and theoretical, nothing wrong with that. But what most funders are looking for is practical, impactful, translational research that can make a difference in whatever it is that you're looking at. Research is an industry, like all other industries, where you do have to work very hard behind the scenes before the success comes. So it's not a case of just putting every grant in and every grant gets funded and everyone thinks it's wonderful. For every 5 grants you put in, you'll probably get 1 up. Your success rate hopefully will get slightly better as you go through your career. But there are many topics that I think would be equally wonderful to study that I haven't studied, simply because A, the constraints of time, or B, it's just not been seen as a priority by other people who are going to fund research. Well, all research unfortunately takes a lot longer time than you think it will when you start out. That's the nature of it, even with good planning. But projects can differ depending on what the research question is and how much data you have to collect, what it is. Just to give you 2 examples, you might be interested in answering a very specific question that has been given to you by an outside donor or a funder who say, we want you to find out the answer to this question for us. In that sense, your brief is already very constrained and it's easy to manage. However, when you're approaching it, when you're driving the research, there are often many facets to the research question that you need to explore. And this is one of the things about contemporary research. It's becoming extremely multi-method, multidisciplinary, multi-perspective. It's not about just slicing off one part of a problem. It's trying to be holistic about it. So by very definition, research projects, they're not laborious and take years to do. That would be inefficient. But to be done well, they need a run-up, they need a lot of planning, they need to be operationalized well, and they need to be completed successfully as well. And all those processes take a little bit of time and effort. And that makes for good, rigorous science to do it that way. One of the things we're quite strong on at ARCCIM, our centre, is to make sure that what we do is translational, and not just to other academics, but to patients, policymakers, other stakeholders. And one of the main platforms of doing that is to be able to disseminate widely across many different audiences to work out what the medium needs to be to capture those people. Writing an academic paper of 3,000 to 5,000 words and getting it published in a peer-reviewed journal, well, that's got limited appeal to most people outside academia. However, putting something on a website that's not just a soundbite but has some bullet points of what the benefit might be of this research and its findings for you as a consumer or as a practitioner, that's a very different proposition, and one that we've been very successfully working on for many years now. So we have a website. We often disseminate via not just academic but professional newsletters, email blasts, connecting and partnering with many organizations in industry. So that's why having a partnership with AAMT, for example, is incredibly important, because it's about capturing a membership. It's about being able to talk to that membership in a way that makes sense to them. Much research, I say with a heavy heart, traditionally at least in the health space, has struggled to be able to communicate itself properly, and that's something that I'm hoping our centre, we have had success at that, but we can keep having success and promote that, advance that, and other people can do that too. Research is important for all practitioners in healthcare, not just now, but it's becoming increasingly so. I can see the challenge of that for many practitioners who haven't been engaged with research before, and I can also see that there are many practitioners who probably don't want to heavily participate in research. They're busy as it is. They didn't come into practice to become researchers. But what is important, I think, is that the profession as a whole in MT, for example, amongst other modalities, that it engages with research increasingly, tries to show that there is a connection between research and practice and it can underpin good care. The other point is that there's nothing for practitioners to be fearful of research. Research is your best friend. It's there to actually help your cause, the professionalization of your industry, and to show good intent, that you're not making decisions based on no evidence, but you're making it based on the best evidence, and also taking into account that we need very sophisticated ways of collecting and measuring data so we can reflect what practitioners think and do. Research which is divorced from practice isn't very good in healthcare. It makes no sense. So the other thing I would say to practitioners about research is there are particular designs and approaches, and at our centre at ARCCIM we're very invested in these, and we've been developing them for a long time, in which you can you can position practitioners at the very heart of the research questions. You can make sure that the very things that you're addressing, trying to answer, make sense to practitioners in everyday routine care, as opposed to be questions which they look at what you've done and say, this makes no sense to me. I don't do any of these things anyway. That's because you probably haven't consulted them properly in the process. ARCCIM, the Australian Research Centre in Complementary Integrative Medicine, we're in the Faculty of Health at UTS in Sydney, University of Technology Sydney. We are a group of methodologists primarily, so we're not coming with any particular clinical perspective or bias. We're just interested in understanding, investigating, and providing a broad evidence base for a whole range of things, massage therapy included, but a whole range of complementary medicines as well. Part of our approach and the unique approach of ARCCIM is the fact that we don't have an affiliation to any particular stance or approach of healthcare or clinical practice. The very fact that we are funded by NHMRC, ARC repeatedly, and as you mentioned, to the tune of quite a lot of money now, gives us a very critical perspective. We can stand in the middle and not commentate, but collect good evidence-based data through rigorous research. That's something that the field of massage therapy to a large extent, but also many other areas of healthcare, they haven't had that type of non-partisan, non-political group of people who are looking and assessing what's going on. So that's the importance of ARCCIM. The other thing about ARCCIM is that we're not just focused on clinical efficacy and effectiveness, which is what most people in complementary medicine research tend to focus on. Does this work? Is this effective? We are interested in those questions, of course, they are important. But what's equally important is to ask many other questions from many other disciplines and perspectives. Public health, health services research, health economics, social science. There's a whole range of other research questions around what motivates patients to try, use, and continue to use a particular therapy like massage. What's the relationship between massage therapists and other healthcare providers in the health system? That's something we need to know more about. Often when you start to ask these questions, you find that empirically there's very little information. People have gone straight to a randomized controlled trial and asking questions about, does this particular form of treatment work for this particular condition? One of the problems of taking that very specific approach first, it's a good approach to take, but it needs to be timely, is the fact that you need to know what the landscape looks like in massage therapy. What do massage therapists do? What's their consultation look like with their patients? Only when you know what's really going on can you ask clinical questions about efficacy that make sense. This again comes back to the point about practitioners. Practitioners have to be at the heart of what it is that the very research questions that you're developing. The relationship with AAMT is a very strong partnership that we're very proud of. It's part of a whole platform of engagement with industry in massage therapy, but also outside, where we take it very seriously that the only way we can not just recruit, but get to understand the practitioner base and each individual practitioner well, is through their professional association. That's an infrastructure that's already there. That's a very convenient and very helpful way of engaging practitioners in terms of the research that could be done with them, for them, and with their very total engagement. The relationship with AAMT as well touches on, and central to that platform is the leadership scheme that we have. So this is the ARCCIM Complementary Medicine International Leadership and Capacity Building Program. We set this up mid last year, 2014. This is the first of its type in the world. It's an international leadership scheme where we have put out for competitive call to all early career researchers around the world an offer that you could be recruited, become a fellow of the ARCCIM Centre, and come for a residential to Sydney every year to brainstorm, to do career development, to understand what's happening internationally, and most importantly, to develop collaboration and get some more runs on the board in terms of empirical data. So AAMT has been very central to that initiative and very generous in terms of being our platinum sponsor. And one of the things that we've been very keen on, and we're always keen on as a centre, is to produce research that's got real output. It would be of little worth sitting around thinking of all these great research questions and trying to answer them, and yet nobody else can even find the information of what your results were. So part of the leadership program is to boost output for these early career researchers primarily, but in collaboration with other senior people like myself at the centre. So we're now only 4 months into that program. The first residential was held in Sydney in early October 2014. The 12 fellows came for 4 days. We brainstormed, we did informal and formal sessions. It was very exciting. And now only 4 months later, we've already got 9 peer-reviewed journal articles either under review or in preparation, a couple of book chapters, and a list of probably another 20 or 30 papers that we will be able to do over the coming months. So it's been highly productive, highly successful. And just to say, those papers are focusing on very different things based on the data that's been collected. But within there is a strong emphasis, amongst other things, on massage therapy and just trying to provide a very broad evidence base to massage. So in terms of massage therapy in particular, one of the key roles that I see for ARCCIM, our centre, and very much in partnership and collaboration with AAMT and with the practitioner base, is to be thinking broadly about what evidence means. As we talked earlier, we shouldn't just go straight to looking at experimental designs and randomised controlled trials. We should really be mapping the landscape of massage therapy in Australia. This will provide a real rich platform for knowing what research questions to then ask that not only are useful for researchers to design studies that are rigorous, but are also very useful for patient outcomes and patient care. So it's a little bit like building a house, but doing it somewhat, with due diligence. It takes a little bit of time, but the benefits you reap from that are that by the time you put the roof on, it's completely watertight and well done, as opposed to just rushing and creating some kind of structure and trying to get to the top first. That doesn't make a lot of sense in this case. So the broad approach of ARCCIM fits beautifully with therapies like massage therapy in terms of there is a lot of need for research capacity building. There's a lot of need for more evidence. It's the constant call from the critics that massage therapy and other therapies are still lacking in certain areas for evidence. One of the key things, though, in providing that evidence is to be coordinated, is to do something that's broad enough that everyone's on the same page. And that doesn't mean that particular people have to lead it. What it means is that most people are walking in the same direction or running together as opposed to just moving out. So that's again where a broad mapping of the landscape or the territory of massage therapy in terms of research, empirical data, can become really, really important, because then you can build that and everyone can build on that same platform. They're in the same space and they can all see the goal of what they're trying to do, which ultimately is to create practice which is effective, safe, and in the interests of patients. Well, look, with all professional associations, AAMT is a good example, it's important that the practitioner base realise that for the good of the profession, if you're going to have infrastructure around things like research, professional development, engagement and literacy with research, then trying to do that on your own is incredibly difficult, if not impossible. What's far better is to facilitate that through a whole cast of membership, and doing that obviously through professional associations makes a lot of sense. The professional associations then work as a very positive force for bringing people together, understanding there's a coordination, not just in practice terms, but also in research terms. It kind of negates the idea that certain pockets of people will just go off and be doing their own thing in the research world. Well, that can be in many regards quite not very useful. What's much better is, because science is very incremental, it takes a long time to move forward little bits, but those bits are incredibly important. It's like building blocks again. So if you've got lots of people on the same page building those blocks, whether it be through a professional association or otherwise, then that's very, very useful. I think massage therapy is one of a whole raft of healthcare professional spaces, which, as we know, is not part of the formalised healthcare system. So politically, economically, socially, and in terms of policy and other things, it has a very particular location and relationship to the mainstream, if you like. And that has many advantages. That's good. That means there's a lot to play with. That means it's very exciting to be raising the bar for a profession such as massage therapy. It also does mean that it's incredibly important, though, that the practitioner base and researchers start to understand that they need to come together more. And that's one of the things I think that's missing in the whole space of massage therapy, is the connect between research and practice. There's a lot of talk of research. There's a lot of activity around research, but most practitioners either A, don't know about it because they're not informed properly, by the researchers, or when they do get to hear about research, it doesn't connect to them. It makes no sense to them. It's not part of their concerns of practice. And that's where this it's not so much new, but that's where this rethought through program of coordinated care of research through something like ARCCIM is very important, because it's about trying to bring together as partners. It sounds very cliched, but trying to get researchers and practitioners to realize that there's a lot of common good that they can do. So it needs a change from researchers to ask the right questions and include practitioners in their designs, and it also needs buy-in from practitioners to be engaged with research. Again, I don't expect practitioners to become researchers or to see research as the prime reason why they're doing practice. That's not only unrealistic, it doesn't make any sense. But what is important is that they see the importance of research and, where possible, engage with it, understand it. Just being able to read and understand and appraise a paper of research is a fantastic thing in terms of connecting practice and the research community. There's a couple of ways of, a couple of things that need to be done, which are distinct but highly interrelated processes. So one is, what is good for massage therapy in terms of setting up good, critical, rigorous research? Well, that's a question to answer in itself. From my perspective as a researcher, but as someone who's connected with industry very much across this whole space of complementary medicine, not just massage therapy, but other areas and professions too, it does seem to me that it's in this environment, which is a good thing. We do need to be thinking more and more about how we connect practitioners and research together. In terms of a political dimension to this, and what does this mean for massage therapy and the wider framework of healthcare, well, it's not for me to ordain where massage therapy will end up or what it could achieve. The only thing I can say is that research will be a major platform or a major plank of any development that needs to happen. It's important for all professions, health professions, that they connect to research and an evidence base. It's, that's not just literature talking, that's known from everyday empirical work, that's how professions develop. So there may be within all professions, and they usually, they can be broad churches with lots of individuals, lots of different ideas. But the bottom line is that as a group, a collective of healthcare practitioners, the way forward is to lean on critical, rigorous research and engage with it. And hopefully researchers, as I said before, will be able to undertake that research with the practitioner not just in mind, but very much engaged and participating. So they're part of the framework of what's happening. So one particular project that was very exciting was which we developed, and we went to the Australian Research Council for money for, and we were very fortunate we were successful. And it came from personal experience, was around the use of a whole range of complementary therapies, including massage therapy, by pregnant women during pregnancy. We had a very lovely data set that we had access to, and in the end the research was incredibly solid in terms of what was accomplished. We had a response rate of, I think, close to 80% for nearly over 2,000 women. We ended up with over 1,800 women in this sample, a national representative sample of pregnant women across Australia. The research questions we were addressing were around just very simple ones that no one had bothered to collect data on before. So it were things like, how many women use complementary medicines through their pregnancy and their labour in Australia? What type of therapies and products and modalities do they use? Why do they use them? How do they use them? When do they use them? These were questions that were very basic. The reason why these questions became known to me were because through my own family and having children, I could see a personal connection in terms of having to make choices about different providers. Do you go see always an obstetrician and midwife only, or do you also incorporate other healthcare options? And so what just came from personal experience ended up being quite a nice piece of empirical science. The excitement of this was that we found that the vast majority of women in this sample were using complementary medicines quite extensively through their pregnancy. And then what became important for us was to find out what information sources, how did they make decisions, where did they find information from. This became really fascinating. We've published 20, 30 papers off this project alone. We did in-depth research interviews with these women as well as a large national questionnaire. And the questionnaire itself, I think, was extensive. It was 20 plus pages long of information. So what was nice about this piece of research was, and all research should be like this, not just for the researcher, but for the people reading it, it connected me, the science, it connected to my personal story. And it connected to something that had happened to me and that I could relate to. But then I needed empirical data. This, you know, whether personally as a practitioner you may do a particular thing, well, anecdotally you may know of some other people that do it, but how prevalent is it across massage therapy, for example? Well, you need to know that type of data if you're going to change or you're going to inform or you're going to improve anything. So it's just a good example of how research, which may be highly rigorous, very scientific, very robust, and follow very particular design and procedures, but it's linked to the personal, it's linked to people, and that's what healthcare research should really always be about, informing people, engaging people. The question I would answer empirically, which many people will already think they know the answer to, and that's good. People are already thinking about it, but we don't have the science, is what do massage therapists do in practice? And that's not a threatening question to ask, it's a very informing question to ask for everyone involved. And what I mean by that, let me explain. It's a simple question to ask, but it's actually quite a complex question to then unravel in a sense. What I mean by that is, well, what conditions do massage therapists across Australia in different areas, with different backgrounds and profiles and demographics, but also in different locations, what conditions do they treat? How many patients do they see? What's the orientation of the massage therapist to the consultation, communication, the relationship with the patient? Equally, in there, in that bag of questions, are also the perspective of the patient. This is there's two parties here that come together in a consultation or in a treatment. That is, and this is not just massage therapy, but that is a very base question to ask that still needs to be addressed empirically through science, and it's the case for many, many areas of healthcare. We don't still have such good empirical data as that. So I've said this before, you can edit this bit out. But the point is, it's about it. The fundamental question for me for massage therapy, as a therapy and as a profession, is to understand and map the landscape. What is happening right now across the country in Australia in terms of massage therapy? What do massage therapists do? What do patients come with? What is it that patients are motivated? What motivates patients to see massage therapists? How can we find empirically what's happening in those consultations and in that practice space that can lead to better informed, good patient outcomes and safe, effective care? I do think, and it comes from the empirical data that we've been collecting in this space for a long time from a number of projects, is that there's a lot of room for improved communication and disclosure, but also just having a conversation between patients and all the providers they may be using. So one of the disconnects in practice that seems to be coming through very clearly from all the literature, not just in Australia but overseas, is that there is room for improvement in the continuity of patient care and the relationships between the providers themselves. And the patient can be a driver for that, not always. You can't expect the patient to bring whole professions together. That's completely unrealistic. But there can be questions asked, there can be ways of approaching the consultation and their own healthcare treatment that could at least spark an interest amongst practitioners of the other people that may be involved in helping this person. The statistics, or roughly the information we have, is that the majority of people that will use not just massage therapy but other complementary therapies will not then necessarily inform their mainstream provider about that, even though they may be having concurrent care for the same condition. So there is often a lack of knowledge on the part of the different professions about where else people are seeking treatment, where they're going for benefit. And that is something that you can imagine from a government or a policy perspective, a public health perspective, that's a major issue that we need to deal with. So the more we can shed light, empirical, good, scientific, critical research on all these topics of healthcare practice, the more chance we've got of enabling and informing people that they do need to know what other people are doing as well, and that it's good for the patient. It shouldn't be about territory disputes and I do this and you do that. It should be about the patient. That's what healthcare is about. And one of the ways that I think ARCCIM, our centre, facilitates this is by actually being one of the leading groups in the world to look at these types of topics, to be excited and interested by what is happening in the practice space and how could you use that empirical data to inform other people so they have at least an understanding of it. And that includes patients as well as different providers. Well, one area that I personally, but also our centre, is becoming increasingly excited and interested in, and it has been a buzzword for some time, and we're not treating it as a buzzword, but the research community has been long interested in the word translation, or to use a different word, implementation. How do you ensure that the results of your research are getting out there to the people that need to know about it? How do you affect change through research as opposed to just constantly writing books, papers and doing grants? That's lovely and fulfilling personally, but you don't really feel like you're doing what you should be doing, which is connecting to the real world and making change. So translation and implementation is something which it has a bit of a history now in healthcare research. There's a whole implementation science that's developed. But what we're very keen to do is to transplant and apply that thinking to very particular case studies, and some will be in complementary medicine or massage therapy. How would we motivate, if we did collect good empirical evidence on a new topic and we needed to inform people, how do we do that effectively? And the way to do that is to not treat dissemination or telling people as just an add-on to the end of a project. It's to treat it as part of the scientific process of the project itself. So it becomes another phase of evidence base. And the way that you do that is by looking at what other people have done. You take a very scientific approach. There is a whole volume of literature out there about some of the best strategies, designs, innovations that you can use to, and this depends on the audience. Particular types of practitioners will need a different strategy to get the message and also engage them in the message. It's not just about telling people things, it's about engaging them so they become proactive with that information and change it. That is the sticky end of research, of health research. It's a challenge for everybody, but it's something that I think ARCCIM increasingly not only is interested in, but we will be moving towards doing a lot of work around that. And I think that's very important for practitioners and the professions too, like massage therapy. Because, as we said earlier, you don't want to just be conducting research for the sake of doing research. It may seem academically prestigious to have lots of other people reading your work who are academics, and we all need that, it's good. But the problem is they're not the end users of the information that we're collecting. It's for patients and practitioners and policymakers. So that's a space that we're moving into that is quite exciting, and I'm very much looking forward to keeping developing that within the program. Well, obviously it's important for professional associations like AAMT that they have strong boards, strong CEOs such as Trish Hughes, in terms of being able to direct the agenda, engage researchers like myself and many other people. This is a team effort on a number of fronts in terms of a collaboration, a partnership coming together. And some of that movement, I think, is looking very, we should be optimistic. I think massage therapy has, like all professions, there's always somewhere to go, there's always more to do, But if you're heading in the right direction and in uniform, then at least you you have the resources, the infrastructure, and things are generally positive. You're moving in the right direction.